Welcome to PandaAudioBooks, the perfect place for a huge collection of fantasy novels. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, a small contribution via PayPal is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to stay updated with our latest audiobook chapters. Chapter 511, out to sea again. After seeing Han Li walk into the teleportation formation without hesitation, the other cultivators paused for a moment before following him. After seeing that the 7 of them had entered the formation spell, the bald old man wore a faint smile and formed an incantation gesture that caused specks of white light to float from his finger. While staring at the specks of white light, the old man suddenly asked, "Since we're sending you to the outer star seas in secret, you're not going to blabber about this, right?" The embroidered-robed man was quick-witted and immediately replied with a sincere expression, "Of course we won't. We are truly grateful towards seniors for being so accommodating. There is no way we would do such a self-destructive thing. Moreover, what use would it be for us to say anything?" Staring at the embroidered-robed man, he coldly said, "If you understand, then good. As there are few people in the Star Palace with our position, we'd receive a stern warning at the worst. But if some rumors do arrive, then fellow Daois Gu and I won't be so forgiving. Additionally, we heard you feared a sudden falling out and all carried response beads. Thorough, but unnecessary. We aren't about to soil our reputations over a few spirit stones." He then swept his gaze past the other cultivators before falling onto Han Li. "Senior truly is a reasonable person. Junior is but a knave that can only think of others in regards to his own desires." The embroidered-robed man forced a smile but faintly felt a chill run down his back. "Humph. No need to speak any nonsense. You're now on your own." The bald old man didn't say anything further and flicked his finger, activating the transportation formation with a faint white magic seal. Suddenly, the spirit stones around the magic formation flourished with white light, causing the 7 to disappear. When the bald old man saw them successively teleport away, his expression suddenly changed and he bewilderedly asked, "What's going on? Didn't you say that you were going to give them false displacement talismans? Why did you give them real ones? This wasn't what we previously agreed upon." The scholarly cultivator coldly snorted and spoke with a grimace. "If I truly took out false displacement talismans, do you really believe we would have been let off? The person who gave us the magic treasures was a nascent soul eccentric. If we took out false talismans, he would have killed us in a fit of anger." He then took out a white cloth and wiped the cold sweat off of his head. The bald old man said with a shocked expression, "Nascent soul cultivator? Brother Qian, are you joking? That person was clearly a late Foundation establishment cultivator." The shriveled man that was left behind was at a loss. "Brother Gu should know that my spirit beast, a soul hair, has no skills apart from being able to keenly sense another's spiritual sense." The scholarly man then flipped his hand to reveal an animal that strongly resembled a kitten. The spirit beast had ears as slender as a rabbit's and sparkling green eyes that continuously darted around. It appeared to be a rather adorable spirit beast. As he caressed the soul hair, he said, although he managed to conceal his aura with some sort of exceptional restraint technique, concealing himself from even the soul hair, he stealthily swept his spiritual sense past the formation spell after we dissolved the restrictions on it. This gave my soul hair the opportunity to detect something was amiss. My soul hair is able to give an appropriate reaction towards mid-core formation and even late-core formation cultivators. However, it didn't give a reaction, but merely continued to shiver inside my sleeve. It can only mean that his spiritual sense was unfathomably profound, but it has only ever given this response when we visit the elders. A trace of fear was contained in his voice. If that's the case, then he must be a nascent soul cultivator. Sweat started to line the bald old man's head. Even if he wasn't, then he must be a late-core formation cultivator. Either way, it wouldn't take much effort for him to exterminate us. The scholarly man spoke without doubt. Luckily, Brother Qian was so quick-witted. If we took out false talismans, we would have brought about our own destruction. I had originally thought he was quite an eccentric individual to give us each a magic treasure without the slightest heartache, but after some further thought, The old man then fearfully asked, "But would there be any problems produced by sending him off to the outer star seas?" "What problems?" "He was a vagrant nascent soul cultivator. I imagine he headed to the outer star seas because he didn't want to be involved in the war between the Star Palace and the Starfall Coalition. Hence, there will be no problems to be had as long as we don't let our superiors know that we allowed a nascent soul cultivator to teleport to the outer star seas. Otherwise, we'll be severely punished." After giving the old man an explanation, his face grew gloomy as he eerily gazed at the dumbstruck shriveled man at their side. As the scholarly man imposingly gazed at him, the shriveled man suddenly trembled and came to a realization. He hastily took several steps back and said, "I didn't hear anything that you two seniors just said. I won't speak any drivel." Before the shriveled man could finish, a streak of yellow light silently flew out and circled around him several times before he fell to pieces. The bald old man recalled his magic treasure and gloomily said, "With this, no one else will know. Although we had something of a relationship together, unfortunately, I cannot let you leave." Han Li and the other 6 cultivators appeared at the other end of the transportation formation with a flash of white light in a shabby stone room. Han Li swept his gaze to the corner of the room where a Star Palace cultivator with a frail appearance was speaking with a scar-faced, grey-robed cultivator. When the Star Palace cultivator saw them appear, he examined them with a frown. However, he soon lost interest and continued to speak with the grey-robed cultivator. The cultivator in charge of the formation said with a displeased tone, "I've already said this. There are currently fixtures in place that render the formation one way only. It can only receive, not send. The sect has already taken all the displacement talismans from me, and even I can no longer return. There is no point in fellow Daoist trying to force me." The grey-robed cultivator shouted out with fury, "Nonsense! There were several people that went back several days ago. How can the transportation formation have changed so quickly?" "Humph! I've already explained it many times, but you just love to ignore me. I no longer have any obligation to speak any further." The Star Palace cultivator glared at the man before sitting down and closing his eyes. When the grey-robed cultivator saw that he was being ignored, his complexion turned bright red, but he didn't take the slightest action. He didn't have the courage to act against a Star Palace cultivator. He turned around in place with great agitation, but when his expression immediately fell upon Han Li and the others that had arrived, his face suddenly grew joyful. He walked towards them before stopping several steps ahead of them and saluted the embroidered-clothed man, who obviously appeared to be the leader of the group, before politely asking, "Did you fellow Taoists come from Heavenly Star City?" After seeing that the scar-faced man was also a late Foundation establishment cultivator, he didn't dare to ignore him and replied, "That's right, we've just arrived. What's wrong, fellow Daoist?" However, he could already guess what the grey-robed cultivator was about to say. The grey-robed cultivator asked with a hopeful tone, "I am Xu Yun. I've been in the outer seas for several years. Could you tell me whether or not the Starfall Coalition has truly been formed and whether or not the city is on the verge of battle?" When the embroidered-robed man saw Xu Yun's expression, he knew what he wanted to hear most. However, the truth would only disappoint him. Hence, he explained with complete openness, "It is true. The righteous and devilish Tao have forged the Starfall Coalition and immediately declared war on the Star Palace. As we do no wish to be drawn into the conflict, we teleported here. I fear fellow Daoist will have no way of returning for the time being." Xu Yun stood in place in shock with a dejected expression. "How can that be? I wanted to return and have these painstakingly acquired materials be refined into medicinal pills. What a waste of time." After this was said, there was silence in the room. Despite having racked their brains to arrive at the outer star seas, they were helpless without any way to return. After a short moment, the embroidered-robed man's expression changed and he suddenly turned to the grey-robed man. He cordially said, "My name is Yi Jing, and these are my close friends. Since fellow Daoist Xu has lived here for several years, could he introduce Wondrous Depths Island to us? Of course, this won't be for free. We're willing to give you a few spirit stones as compensation." Although Xu Yun didn't recover from his dejection, he still spiritedly replied, "There is no need for compensation. As you've already answered my question, I am merely returning the favor." Please don't hesitate to ask any questions you may have, and I'll answer to the best of my knowledge. Suddenly, the party of Foundation establishment cultivators revealed joy at the prospect of being given an introduction to this unfamiliar place. It would prove quite favorable for them in their future endeavors. When Han Li saw this, he also smiled. With arms crossed, he stood behind them as he waited for the explanation. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 512. Blackrock City. Yi Jing, the embroidered-robed man, swept his gaze around the room before looking at the Star Palace cultivator sitting in the corner. It is somewhat inconvenient to speak here. Fellow Daoist Shu, how about we chat outside? Outside? Sure. Shu Yun indifferently replied. Yi Jing rejoiced, but he soon thought of something and turned his head around and widely smiled towards Han Li. Brother Crooked Soul, wouldn't it be better to come along with us and listen? Better yet, we can work together. Han Li blankly stared for a moment before smiling. All right, I did want to hear his explanation as well. Han Li then casually followed after them. What? That fellow Daoist isn't part of your group? Shu Yun was quite surprised. The dark-skinned, middle-aged man suddenly shouted out with a trace of hostility. He did teleport along with us, but before that, we were strangers. Yi Jing frowned in response but didn't say anything. Shu Yun wordlessly nodded. After they all walked out of the stone room, the newcomers surveyed their surroundings with amazement. The scene was entirely different from what Han Li had seen on Deep Jade Island. They emerged within a small market city. Although it appeared crude and only spanned about 10 kilometers, the city was created entirely out of black stone. The shabby building that housed the transportation formation lay at the center of the city. It was propped up by a tall altar-like platform with steps descending from every side. Due to the height of the surrounding terrain, they were able to have a clear view of the surrounding city. The city seemed to be surrounded by 12-meter-tall stone walls along with a dense white sparkling barrier. However, there were tall buildings of varying sizes behind the walls. Strangely enough, none of them had pointed roofs, they were all flat. At first glance, although the city was full of buildings, few of them were independently constructed. It wasn't just a string of stone buildings joined together, but rather, frequent masses of stone buildings were lined up together. What shocked Han Li the most was that a few mortals were mingling amongst the cultivators on the crude black stone road, occasionally rushing in and out of the stone buildings. But this wasn't enough to shock Han Li by itself. It was the fact that a majority of the mortals were young, beautiful women. As for the other mortals, they were burly men and delicate youths. When Yi Jing's party saw this, they were just as shocked as Han Li. Since they wanted to travel to the outer star seas, it was only natural to do research on the islands in advance. However, this scene was completely contrary to the information they had acquired. A strange expression momentarily appeared on the Yi Jing's face. He then said with a deep voice, "Fellow Daoist Liu, take another look at the jade slip containing information on Wondrous Depths Island. Could it be that we were mistaken?" I'll take another look at it." The woman surnamed Liu hastily looked through her storage pouch. Shu Yun waved his arm and stopped the woman from finding the jade slip. There is no need to look for the information on Wondrous Depths Island. Since most of it is false, it is natural to feel surprised. Yi Jing's expression changed. False? What is that supposed to mean? It is quite simple. Wondrous Depths Island is quite different from other Demon Beast Islands. All cultivators are given a gag order prior to their return, allowing them to only leak certain information. Else, they would suffer great punishment. It's hard to say whether or not it will prove fortunate that you've arrived at this island. Certain information? Could it be due to the Star Palace? Lady Liu appeared disturbed. Shu Yun sighed and said, "It isn't the Star Palace, but the various united powers that reign over this island. Even the Star Palace is unwilling to lightly offend this faction." When those words were said, Han Li raised his eyebrows while the others looked at each other in dismay. Xu Yun chuckled and spoke with a loud, alluring tone. He. This place isn't too different from what you've imagined. In fact, to some cultivators, it is a place they could only dream of. Blackrock City has the sole market and is the only city on Wondrous Depths Island. So long as you have spirit stones or demon cores, it is a cultivator's paradise. You can purchase items that cannot be acquired from other demon beast islands. Regardless of whether it's top-grade cultivation vessels, formidable magic treasures, priceless spirit beasts, or exceedingly rare materials, this place has it all. The nearby cultivators and mortals glanced over due to his loud voice, but they soon averted their eyes and went on their way. When Yi Jing heard this, he became especially bewildered. As for Han Li, he continued to look around with a calm expression as if he hadn't heard what Xu Yun had said. When Xu Yun saw this, he glanced at Han Li with slight surprise. Yi Jing let out a long sigh and asked with a heavy voice, "Could Brother Xu give us an introduction of this place?" Xu Yun seemed to have completely recovered from his low spirits and candidly said, "Of course I can. Since I can't leave for the time being, how about I give you an explanation of the city while we stroll around? It should prove more useful than giving an empty explanation while standing in place. However, if anyone has any windfalls in the future, please don't forget about me." "Then I must thank you, Brother Xu. This city appears quite different from others." Yi Jing then looked at a male cultivator with a trace of amazement. The cultivator was holding a mortal woman in his embrace in a bold display as they walked down the street, much to the disinterest of the other mortals and cultivators around them. Xu Yun smiled when he saw this and didn't say anything further. Instead, he brought them over to a large stone building. The building had already caught Han Li's attention as it was one of the largest in the city. At a distance, he saw that two charming mortal women were standing at its entrance. As the many cultivators entered the building, they gave them a welcoming smile. Along the way, Xu Yun warned them with a solemn expression, "Bear this in mind. Although this isn't Heavenly Star City, all magic battles are strictly forbidden apart from particular arenas. If this rule is violated, it will be punished by death without question." The dark-skinned, middle-aged man spoke with shock. "What? This punishment is even more severe than Heavenly Star Cities." Xu Yin slowly explained, "True, it is far more severe. But like this, cultivators who enter the city may truly be at ease without having to worry. To the best of my knowledge, no one has ever managed to carry out their revenge and successfully leave the city alive. After all, there is a nascent soul senior standing guard at all times." A nascent soul cultivator. Yi Jing's party all wore expressions of shock. Han Li's heart trembled violently and he became completely vigilant. "All right. Let's hold off on any more questions until after we go inside." Underneath the smiles of the two beautiful mortal women, the party apprehensively followed Xu Yun into the building. As for Han Li, a strange glint flickered from his eyes before he curiously followed them in. After walking through the large entrance, a huge circular screen blocked their way. The screen was pink and had an image of a palace made flying through the skies. Although the image of the woman was shown from behind, it appeared to be fluctuating as if she were truly in flight. From the faint pink light that the screen emitted, it couldn't possibly be a low-grade magic tool. To the sides of the screen, there were two semicircle doors. And to the front of the screen, there was a female cultivator who wore azure palace robes and appeared to be 30 years old. She was happily chatting with a smiling male cultivator. But strangely enough, despite her ordinary looks, each and every one of her movements were filled with a mature feminine charm. Additionally, the smile she wore as she spoke displayed a faintly seductive attraction. Although she was a mid-foundation establishment cultivator like the man she was speaking to, the man was completely enraptured by her. However, when the woman caught sight of Xu Yun and the others, her eyes suddenly brightened and she clapped her hands, causing a young mortal girl to come out from behind a door. As the male cultivator was dragged behind the screen, he gazed at the female cultivator with a reluctant expression. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 513, Demon Beasts of the Depths. Well, if it isn't fellow Daois Shu? I heard you wanted to return to Heavenly Star City, but I suppose the transportation formation is still unusable. The woman's voice was soft and alluring, bringing forth a sense of comfort to those that heard it. Han Li unconsciously frowned and bitterly laughed in his mind. It seemed a majority of the female cultivators that he met cultivated some sort of secret bewitchment technique. Although this woman's bewitchment techniques were far inferior to fairy violet spirits and yuan yaos, it was more than enough to easily capture the minds of a few low-grade male cultivators. With that thought, Han Li swept his gaze across the party of cultivators. Yi Jing and Xu Yun were able to keep their expressions straight, but the other male cultivators had unnatural expressions. Their gazes unconsciously wandered across the woman's body. These cultivators are new arrivals. I've brought them along to take a look, Xu Yun then said with a resentful tone. As for returning to Heavenly Star City, I'm afraid that won't be happening for a while. I didn't expect the news to be true. A battle is about to occur. With luminous eyes, the woman enchantingly covered her smile and said, "It's still good that you will remain here. If you were to leave, I'd be losing a dear customer." The woman's mature charm had fully captured the vulnerable men of the party, leaving the two women among them flushed red with anger. Annoyed at the woman's use of her bewitchment technique, Xu Yun called out to her, "Lady Ming, they are my guests. A badge, please." He, all right. But it seems that these fellow Taoists should have no problem on this island. Their cultivation isn't inferior to yours. Lady Ming chuckled and then glanced at Han Li and Yi Jing before erasing her bewitchment technique, returning her appearance to that of an ordinary woman. The change occurred quickly, causing the others to pause for a moment before revealing embarrassment. The woman then clapped her hands, summoning a young mortal woman from behind the curtain. Lady Ming coldly spoke to the mortal woman, "Bring Master Xu down to the auction. It should be starting soon." Then with a wave of her hand, she passed a green jade badge to Xu Yun. Xu Yun received the badge and followed the mortal woman to the side door without ever looking at her. Of course, Han Li and the others closely followed after them. In the instant he entered the door, Han Li felt a slight spiritual chi fluctuation as if he had entered some sort of restriction. His expression momentarily changed before returning to normal. The party's gaze brightened as they saw the enchanting scenery that laid behind the screen. There was a long pathway about 6 meters wide that led to 2 expansive halls. The left hall was spacious and bright, and apart from a few tall black stone pillars, there were no other obstructions in sight. In addition, it was currently bustling with activity with about 30 cultivators waiting there, all in a single file line. Regardless of whether these cultivators were male or female, they were each accompanied by a young mortal woman. Although a few of the male cultivators were lecherously sizing up the scantily clad women, there were only a few teasing words spoken at most. They restrained themselves as if they were fearful of the consequences. At the end of the line, there was a small room that had a door shining with white light. When the cultivators in line pressed their jade badge against the door, it opened and allowed only one person inside. As for the large hall on the right, it was covered in a barrier of faint blue light, blocking it entirely from sight. This place is called the Bright Gem Pavilion. It is specialized in selling off harvests from the outer seas. Particularly valuable items may also be auctioned off here after being appropriately appraised. There are several similar businesses that operate in the city, but they are ran by differing powers, each backed by a nascent soul cultivator. Of course, at least that much is required to be doing business in a place as untamed as the outer seas. When Lady Liu heard this, she took in a cold breath of air and muttered, "So many nascent soul cultivators. Could they be from the Four Elements Merchant Union?" Xu Yun calmly said, "The Four Elements Merchant Union? They have no power here. While they hold dominance over the other Demon Beast Islands, Wondrous Depths Island is the sole island where multiple factions joined hands to control it. While these powers alone cannot compete with the Four Elements Merchant Union in the inner Star Seas, when joined together here, even the Star Palace dare not treat them lightly. However, this is only limited to Wondrous Depths Island." From Brother Shu's tone, there seems to be something unique about Wondrous Depths Island. For what reason would so many powers dare to oppose the Four Elements Merchant Union? As Yi Jing was a shrewd and cunning sort, he heard something amiss from his words. With an ordinary expression, Xu Yun explained, he. Brother Yi guessed correctly. The name Wondrous Depths is due to the nearby seas being unfathomably deep and filled with demon beasts. Rare high-grade demon beasts are often seen in those depths. It is said that demon beasts of even grade 8 and higher appear there. It is for these high-grade demon beasts that these various nascent soul experts stand in opposition against the Four Elements Merchant Union, forbidding them from gaining dominance of the island. It is said that when these depths were discovered, many battles erupted between the Four Elements Merchant Union and the various powers before the Star Palace later intervened to act as a mediator. After some unknown conditions were reached, the island was handed over to the various powers to jointly administer. It was at that time that it became forbidden to spread the truth of Profound Depths Island to the inner star seas. Otherwise, one would find themselves wanted dead by the joint powers. Han Li was quite amazed at this. As for the others, they felt even more shocked. Demon beasts of grade 8 or higher are existences equivalent to nascent soul cultivators. They truly exist here. Yi Jing was unable to keep his calm. I'm not too sure. I've never personally seen them. However, there truly are people that hunt grade 7 demon beasts. The Bright Gem Pavilion sells grade 7 demon cores where nascent soul cultivators compete at extraordinary prices. Xu Yun then clicked his tongue in admiration. Han Li, who had kept silent until now, frowned and asked, "Does fellow Daoist Xu mean that demon beasts are easier to find in the depths?" Xu Yun glanced at Han Li in surprise. After pausing in thought, he said, "Demon beasts are slightly easier to find in the depths. However, due to the frequent appearances of high-grade demon beasts there are also countless cultivators that meet their end." As Yi Jing's group had never previously visited another demon beast island, they were somewhat skeptical of these words. But Han Li managed to gain some understanding towards the depths. It seems that this was a place where danger came hand in hand with riches. So that's why this place was so odd. The party grew silent before the mortal woman guiding them respectfully asked, "Masters, do you wish to first go to the treasure viewing hall or the treasure rest hall?" There is nothing to see at the treasure viewing hall. It is only some appraisal masters looking at unidentified items before offering to exchange them for spirit stones or put them up for auction. Let's go to the treasure rest hall instead. The items there will expand the perspective of all fellow Taoists. Xu Yun was clearly familiar with this place. Without waiting for the mortal woman to lead the way, he walked into the right hall. When he approached the light barrier, he wordlessly pressed the jade badge against it, causing a circular opening to appear. He then beckoned to the rest of the party before walking in. When Yi Jing and the others saw this, they simply entered in a line. When Han Li saw this, he noticed the mortal woman respectfully waiting outside and curiously asked her, "You don't need to go inside." The mortal woman widely smiled at Han Li and explained, "Us mortals aren't allowed to enter the treasure rest hall. This servant will be waiting for you outside." Han Li nodded and walked through the blue light barrier without another word. The light barrier then closed by itself. The interior was quite crude and simple. Apart from some wooden chairs, there was just a 10-meter wide stage at the end of the hall. There was an old man standing at the back of the stage eloquently speaking into a shining blue stone that he was holding in his hand. About 30 cultivators of varying grades stood below him, consisting of both chi condensation and foundation establishment cultivators. There were no core formation cultivators among them. The old man respectfully said, "This blue light stone is a fire attribute magic tool refined from exceptional materials. Its owner is putting it up for bid starting at 500 spirit stones. According to long-established rules, each increasing bid must be at least 30 spirit stones more. Let us start the bid. 530 spirit stones. 570. 600. After the old man finished, many cultivators began to shout out bids. Although the bids couldn't be said to be fiery, the final bid still managed to reach close to 700 spirit stones. A young foundation establishment cultivator then walked up and bought the magic tool using solely spirit stones before immediately taking it away. Next up, we have an earth attribute magic tool. The old man continued to auction off the next item without any delay. Han Li naturally had no interests in magic tools, and swept his gaze past the scene instead. He saw Xu Yun whispering to the rest of the party at a corner of the hall. Han Li then walked over with an unchanged expression. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 514, Female Cultivation Vessels. Lady Liu doubtfully said to Xu Yun, "This seems no different from ordinary auctions. Are we truly going to see any exceptional items here?" Xu Yun said with a mysterious expression, "Relax. Although auctions frequently take place, occurring anywhere from one every several days to half a month, each auction will always show some exceptional items. Although they aren't auctioning off the most precious materials, they are still rarely seen in the inner star seas." He then saw Han Li walk over and gave him a smile. Han Li casually nodded his head and asked a question that left them somewhat surprised. "Fellow Daoist Xu, how many cultivators are there in Blackrock City?" "There don't seem to be many to people present." Xu Yun calmly admitted, "Brother Crooked Soul is truly discerning. Although there are temporary residences such as inns in Blackstone City, there are no permanent residences for foreign cultivators. High-grade cultivators may possess their own cave residence on another island. As for low-grade cultivators, they may take shelter in the small villages and towns on other islands with mortals. While all cultivators come to Blackstone City to do business, low-grade cultivators are by far the most commonly found." Yi Jing paused for a moment before asking a question that puzzled even Han Li. "But mustn't one be at least foundation establishment to survive in the outer seas? Why are there so many mortals and chi condensation cultivators here?" Xu Yun calmly replied, "Brother Yi's question strikes at the most crucial point, which is the greatest difference between Wondrous Depths Island and the other Demon Beast Islands. For other Demon Beast Islands, a few high-grade cultivators go there to hunt demon beasts before returning after accumulating enough materials. But for Wondrous Depths Island, a few years after the various powers settled here, several spirit stone mines were discovered in some of the nearby islands, and a few production sites for required cultivation materials were established as well, causing the island to become entirely self-sufficient. As such, a few cultivators made a living here and dragged along their families, eventually producing the many mortals and low-grade cultivators in this city. I also heard that the powers administering Blackstone City are slowly transporting their main forces over to this city. I reckon in a couple tens of thousands of years, this place will become a second inner star seas. However, apart from Blackstone City, the villages on the other islands can't be considered safe in the least. Those small villages are often exterminated by sudden attacks from high-grade demon beasts. This current situation in this place quite resembles how the inner star seas first came to be." After that was said, the party was left dumbstruck. Yi Jing let out a deep breath before pensively asking, "Why aren't the Star Palace and the other powers involved with this place?" Xu Yun coldly snorted and said, "This place is far from being anywhere near as prosperous as the inner star seas. Furthermore, there is still more than enough empty space in the inner star seas for them to vie for. What time do they have to spare over these desolate seas? In fact, the other powers are actually looking forward to having the island's governing factions move their forces over to this island. Then there would be few of the factors at play in the chaotic inner star seas." He was clearly still gloomy about the Star Palace suddenly closing the transportation formation. After Yi Jing's party heard this, they felt it made sense and didn't speak any further about the subject after glancing at one another. As they were lowly foundation establishment cultivators, it would be better for them to refrain from talking about powers far beyond their control, lest they attract calamity. After selling off several magic tools and materials, a blue-clothed, middle-aged man appeared behind the old man in charge of the auction. He held a red box containing a fist-sized sphere that was white at its center and purple at its edges. When Xu Yun saw this, his spirits were roused. "Fellow Taoists, take a look. This is one of the most important goods that are auctioned off at Wondrous Depths Islands, demon beast eggs. There is no lack of such valuable treasures. These items fetch astronomical prices in the inner star seas, but they can be found for much cheaper on Profound Depths Island. This is because apart from a few particular beast eggs, a majority of them are incapable of being transferred over through the teleportation formation. When they are teleported over, most eggs die. That is why whenever a rare demon beast egg appears, the spirit beast is usually hatched and nurtured until it can tolerate the transportation formation before being brought back to the inner star seas. This is, of course, after high-grade cultivators bid copious amounts of spirit stones for it. Demon beast egg. Yi Jing's eyes brightened. He had always dreamed of raising a high-grade demon beast. The others also revealed expressions of pleasant surprise. With that said, they would later have the opportunity to acquire their own spirit beast. In the inner star seas, finding a good spirit beast was an extremely difficult matter. This is the egg of a violet cloud eagle. Upon reaching maturity, it becomes a grade 4 demon beast. Although it only knows simple defensive magic techniques, it has a body of steel-like feathers and is faster than top-grade flying magic tools. With talons that can easily tear through the defenses of a Foundation Establishment cultivator, it can be considered a rare demon beast and undoubtedly an optimal choice for Foundation Establishment cultivators. The starting price is 2,000 spirit stones. Each bid must increase by at least 100. The bid will now start. The old man seemed quite confident about the popularity of the demon beast egg. After only giving a quick introduction, he started the bid without any delay. When the cultivators beneath him heard that the bidding had started, they immediately started calling out their prices. Although grade 4 demon beasts held little interest to core formation cultivators, they're quite suitable for Foundation Establishment cultivators. This is because not only do higher grade spirit beasts cost far more, but the time it takes for them to mature was also far too long. Even if they used secret techniques to hasten their aging, it would still take far too long for a Foundation Establishment cultivator. 2,500 spirit stones. 2,700. 3,000. Oi. The violet cloud eagle's egg quickly broke 3,000 spirit stones before finally topping off at 3,300 spirit stones by an excited female cultivator. The dark-skinned, middle-aged man gazed at the egg in the woman's hand and muttered, "It truly is far cheaper than the inner star seas. If this were Heavenly Star City, this kind of flying spirit beast would easily fetch over 5,000 spirit stones." Apart from Han Li, all the others watched this scene with bright eyes. When Xu Yun saw this, he knowingly smiled. Up next, the old man auctioned off a grade 3 spirit beast egg followed by a grade 4 demon beast, both at a considerable price before concluding the spirit beast egg auction. Upon seeing what was auctioned next, Lady Liu couldn't help but wear a face of shock. What's going on? The others in her party also looked surprised. Two beautiful women that appeared to be around 20 years old stood at the old man's side. Although they only had cultivations at the third layer of qi condensation, they were both genuine cultivators. From their submissive attitude while being brought on stage, it seemed the two female cultivators were the goods to be auctioned. Xu Yun didn't reveal the slightest surprise, and gestured for them to listen to what the old man was about to say. Up next, we have two low-grade qi condensation cultivation vessels. They have only cultivated the basic 5 elements cultivation arts, and both of them are undefiled. According to their requests, only a mid-foundation establishment cultivator or higher may bid on them. The starting bid on each of them is 2,000 spirit stones. Each increase in bid must be. Ever since the old man brought the two women on stage, many of the male cultivators beneath him started to leer at the women. However, the old man's words were quite dragged out for a long while and nobody uttered a bid. Two male cultivators that sat in front of the group even began to have a whispered discussion. 2,000 spirit stones to buy a third-layer female cultivation vessel. If you really wanted a concubine, wouldn't you want to go elsewhere and buy a mortal girl? When they grow old, you could just pass them spirit stones and have them leave. If it were a Foundation Establishment vessel, I'd be more than willing to spend more spirit stones. You're dreaming. Do you think you're a core formation cultivator? Don't forget the customs here. Foundation Establishment vessels aren't something that the likes of us could ever afford. At that amount of spirit stones, it'd be more profitable to buy a spirit beast egg. When Han Li heard their chatter, although he felt amazed, any sign of it soon disappeared from his face. He had long ago heard rumors of a few powers secretly nurturing some young female cultivators for the sole purpose of being cultivation vessels. There were even a few high-grade cultivators that bestowed female cultivators as gifts. But regardless of how it was said, Open auctions of female cultivation vessels never occurred in the inner star seas. It truly shocked him how openly it occurred here. Yi Jing and company managed to calm their expressions. After all, cultivation vessels were something that everyone knew about in the cultivation world. However, as they had 2 female cultivators in their party, the current situation was quite uncomfortable. There is no need for fellow Taoists to feel shocked. These women were willing to act as cultivation vessels without coercion. As their aptitudes are terrible as a whole, it would be quite difficult for them to cultivate to high layers of cultivation using ordinary methods. They have no elders to rely on, and no powers are willing to invest the spirit stones required to nurture them. Hence, this is their only method in the outer star seas, as they found it disdainful to do mortals' work and suicidal to go out and hunt demon beasts. As they have managed to somewhat cultivate, they will take the initiative to become a cultivation vessel for a higher grade male cultivator. As such, they can give their homes a large amount of spirit stones and manage to acquire a pillar of support for themselves. If they are able to acquire the favor of a male cultivator, they will be able to become a concubine or have an opportunity to become something greater. Naturally, there are even high-grade female cultivators that take the initiative to become cultivation vessels for other reasons. But in that case, lower-grade male cultivators are forbidden from bidding. That is to be expected. Xu Yun slowly explained this as if he were long accustomed to the sight. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 5:15. Golden Thumb Pavilion. The others responded to Xu Yun's explanation of the purchasing of cultivation vessels with silence. After all, with 2 female cultivator companions currently at their side, it was difficult to speak further on the topic. Han Li stroked his chin without showing the slightest change in expression. He didn't require a vessel to increase his cultivation, nor could he afford to keep something so cumbersome by his side. Although these female cultivator vessels aroused a feeling of discomfort and pity in him, he turned a blind eye as he was disinclined to take action. At that moment, the 2 female cultivators on stage wore an expression of disappointment upon not receiving a single bid. Seeing this, Xu Yun gave an explanation with a faint smile. Their cultivation is a bit too shallow. Although they were willing to become a cultivation vessel, they can't provide much assistance towards higher grade cultivators. As such, no one was willing to take them. However, it isn't necessarily absolute. If by chance a foundation establishment cultivator were to fancy their appearance, it wouldn't be rare for them to later be bought at a high price. Yi Jing forced a chuckle and didn't say anything further. Xu Yun calmly smiled and didn't seem to mind. The following items up for auction were more items that were rarely seen in the inner star seas. However, Han Li revealed a lazy expression, unwilling to waste more of his time looking at them. Just as he was coming up with an excuse to leave, Xu Yun seemed to have noticed Han Li's impatience and took the initiative to say, "While this auction doesn't have any finer goods, the annual combined auction has some truly rare items appear. Fellow Taoists should take a look at it when it comes around. For now, I'll introduce you to the other areas of Blackrock City." Naturally, Yi Jing and the others didn't refuse, as they were currently lacking in spirit stones from the cost of the teleportation. The group nodded their heads and followed Xu Yun out of the treasure rest hall. The mortal woman waiting outside of the hall accompanied them until they left the Bright Gem Pavilion. This group of several tens of buildings are temporary residences where foreign mortals are staying for the time being. Mortals that wish to make a living in Blackrock City must first register here, much to the benefit of the city's administrators. If they are unable to find employment after a certain amount of time, they must leave Blackrock City. For example, the mortal women we saw in the Bright Gem Pavilion all live here. That equally large group of building is the city's largest raw material store, the Golden Thumb Pavilion. They specialize in selling all sorts of rare materials. It is said that so long as you know the name of the material, the store will always be able to sell it to you. Although this is somewhat of an exaggeration, its reputation is quite grand. As for those 3 buildings close to it, Xu Yun brought the party down the street and spoke with great familiarity. When Han Li heard about the Golden Thumb Pavilion, his heart stirred, and he came to a sudden stop. Xu Yun was baffled and paused for a moment before asking, "Fellow Daoist Crooked Soul, is something wrong?" Yi Jing's party glanced behind them at Han Li with equivalently puzzled expressions. Han Li took a quick look at the sky before lowering his head to calmly say, "I have something that I must attend to alone, and I must part with you here. Perhaps we may see each other again should the future allow it." His voice carried an irrefutable tone. Xu Yun and Yi Jing were surprised upon hearing this. They didn't wish for a high-grade cultivator such as Han Li to depart their party. But when they attempted to urge him to stay, a cold glint flickered from Han Li's eyes as his gaze swept past them, causing their hearts to tremble. Their words of opposition were involuntarily swallowed, and they could only murmur as they watched Han Li disappear into the Golden Thumb Pavilion. At that moment, the two bewilderedly glanced at each other with cold sweat dripping down their backs. The others at their side looked at the two with confusion, ignorant of what had happened. "That person." Yi Jing forced a laugh and thought to say something. "Since fellow Daoist Crooked Soul is unwilling to travel together with us, let's leave him be. It's his decision. Let us continue to take a look at another street." For some unknown reason, Xu Yun hastily cut off Yi Jing and took the initiative to walk down another street. Yi Jing then suddenly heard a voice transmission from Xu Yun, "Fellow Daoist Yi, that person's actions are an unfathomable mystery. Let us cut ties with him. Else, we may find ourselves inviting death if we're not careful. It turns out that fellow Daoist Crooked Soul's cultivation is far beyond ours. Let us not speak of this again." Yi Jing's expression changed several times upon hearing this. After taking another glance at the Golden Thumb Pavilion, he lightly nodded his head before following after them. At that moment, Han Li was already being guided by a delicate youth into an elegantly decorated room. Although the Golden Thumb Pavilion appeared to be one huge stone building from the outside, the interior consisted of many rooms, each specialized in selling all sorts of materials. Without the slightest of formalities, Han Li had entered the Golden Thumb Pavilion for the purpose of seeing the establishment steward. Were it any other cultivator, this wouldn't have been easily accomplished. But after revealing his true core formation cultivation, he was immediately brought to the esteemed guest lounge. Core formation cultivators couldn't be treated lightly even in Blackstone City. After waiting for a few moments in the room, an old man with a common appearance walked in with a smile. "Fellow Daoist's face is quite unfamiliar. It must be your first visit to the Golden Thumb Pavilion. I am the establishment steward, Li Zun." The old man cupped his fist towards Han Li. He was an early core formation cultivator just like Han Li. With a tone that was neither submissive nor overbearing, Han Li replied, "This is truly my first time here at your esteemed pavilion. Moreover, I have a few things I wish to consult fellow Daoist Li about. I hope you don't mind. Please, don't hesitate to ask. I will assist you to the best of my ability." Steward Li was quite imposing. Without asking Han Li any questions, he had already slapped his chest in a pledge and agreed. This forthright and impressive display left a positive impression on Han Li. However, the old man didn't possess the skill to see through Han Li's disguise techniques. He accepted Han Li's sickly appearance as a middle-aged man without the slightest suspicion. Han Li faintly smiled and directly stated his intentions without the slightest pretense. "I wish to purchase an ingredient for refining pills. However, I am only aware of its name from antiquity and have been unable to find it. I was hoping to try my luck by coming here and meeting with you, fellow Daoist Li." Li Zun inwardly let out a sigh of relief and replied with a beaming smile, "He. It is but a trivial matter. It is of no problem." He then changed expressions and coldly spoke in the direction of the door, "Servant, go fetch Ju Yu." "Yes." The young servant swiftly ran off. Li Zun turned back to Han Li and smiled, "Please wait shortly, fellow Daoist. Although Ju Yu is only an qi condensation cultivator, he has done extensive research on ancient pill formulas and medicines. I'm certain that he won't leave you disappointed." Han Li wore a slight smile on his face and thought to say something else, when a streak of red light flew into the room. The red light circled once around the top of the room, before accurately landing in the old man's hand. It was a seeking talisman. A strange expression flickered from Han Li's eyes as the talisman combusted inside the old man's hand. The steward stared at the fire in his hand before he extinguished it. He then raised his head to look at Han Li with a surprised expression. The old man's attitude suddenly became far more cordial. "I am truly lacking in manners. I didn't expect Brother Crooked Soul to have just arrived at Blackrock City today. This store owner should be treating you with the utmost respect." In that short moment, he had managed to discover Han Li's general origins, much to Han Li's shock. However, his expression maintained a calm smile, revealing none of his inner thoughts. Han Li played it down. "Fellow Daoist is too polite. I had to use many tricks in order to arrive at Wondrous Depths Island. I didn't mean to attract so much attention." The old man was able to see that Han Li didn't wish to further speak of the matter and tactfully changed the topic. He then chatted about a few interesting tales about Wondrous Depths Island, much to Han Li's interest. At that moment, a middle-aged scholarly man entered the room and deeply saluted the two. He respectfully said, "Guu pays his respects to these seniors. Junior awaits your instructions." His appearance was elegant with a somewhat sophisticated aura. He had a long black beard and two shining, black eyes. Li Zun nodded to him and beckoned him over. The old man commanded him with an indifferent expression, "This senior Crooked Soul has a few questions about ancient spiritual medicines. Answer him honestly." Guu stood up straight and solemnly said, "As you wish. Junior will answer to the best of his abilities." If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week.